Great. Yay. Good morning. Good afternoon. Today, our topic is mindfulness, and I'm talking with Becky from Mindful You. Thank you so much for being here today, Becky.
Thanks for having me.
We are, connected through my sister. We're trying to remember when we've met and how we've met many years ago, probably at this point. But our sister put us in touch that you've since, you're a yoga teacher and you have this Mindfulness You program that you're launching with some very insightful videos. So I'm so glad that we can talk about this today.
Awesome. Me too. Very exciting.
Yeah. So I always start off by just getting a definition of what it means to you so that we're kind of seeing where you're coming from. So what is mindfulness?
A definition, just that's the one I have like 2 pages of stuff written.
Yeah.
So John Kabat-Zinn, who's kind of like the godfather of mindfulness, I've heard people say, he defines mindfulness as paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally. So that's like the most gorgeous, perfect definition that there ever was. It sounds simple, right? But I think it's important to know that mindfulness is, while it's simple, it's not easy. So I kind of thought maybe like breaking that definition apart a little bit. Excuse me, my allergies in the morning make me hoarse and sniffly. So I thought I'd do a little flip and just a quick ask you a question.
Yeah.
When was a time when you felt the most joy, when you were really enjoying yourself? And it doesn't have to be like it doesn't have to be like my wedding day. It can be, but is it just even a moment where you're just really engrossed and really enjoying your time?
Something simple I can think, because of course my mind goes immediately to my wedding day and just like how much joy there was around and like all the people and the but something simple is like when I'm hosting people for dinner, like back when you could have people over for dinner, and like I'm like when I'm prepping a meal for a dinner party, like I feel like I'm excited and I'm like doing something with my hands, and I'm looking forward to the evening with friends and bringing people together. I think that's probably a moment where I'm
perfect,
really happy.
Yeah, that's perfect. So in the definition, paying attention on purpose, that's the paying attention part, right? That's when that's presence, when you are really, really present. So when you have awareness that you're present, that's mindfulness. When you're like, look at me, I'm being present, I am here. You're aware. That's when mindfulness kind of comes into play. Both very important. You can't have one without, you can have one without the other. You can have presence without mindfulness, but you can't have mindfulness without presence.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, and have you ever like sat with like an experience and you notice like the sensations get louder, the colors get brighter? Like if you just sat, like I know, just sitting sometimes even in my backyard, but just being someplace really beautiful, and you just get really into the moment, and you just suddenly things just kind of get brighter and louder.
Yes.
So
and like you can smell really well. That's like one of the things that's been coming up for me this year is like smell.
Yeah, well, and I mean in this year I think everything is louder.
Yeah.
But so the present moment, as far as the next part of breaking it, that part, so this is where it gets hard, because we think that mindfulness is about finding that joy, right? It's about being in that joy. Like if I'm not feeling in that moment in that kitchen of cooking and being there, then I'm not doing it right. So the real goal of mindfulness is when you can stay present and in those non-joyful moments, when it gets ugly, when there's the shadow piece that you had done on that interview, the ugly, the discomfort is the word that I think I really like to use the most. When things aren't comfortable, because we're so inclined to go away from the discomfort of the world. We're always looking for that pleasure, always looking to replace what's not comfortable with what we think is comfortable, with what we're going to find. Like, oh, I'm just going to eat this ice cream and I'm going to enjoy it and I'm going to be present. And you can do that, right? There's nothing,
Right.
but be aware that that's what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. I recently read the difference between like becoming versus being. And becoming is chasing. It's like you have a goal and you want to learn this thing or do this thing or try this thing. And that's becoming, which is what I find really exciting. But that there's also value in being and sitting in stillness and like letting the experience kind of wash over you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so when you can be aware of the discomfort and let it be there. And you get to do that with the joy too, right? Like it's not like it's just, always discomfort. Allow the negative emotions. And then you're also kind of in turn able to allow more of the good as well. And I just think it's so liberating to be able to have the freedom to feel whatever is true for you in that moment. Like
I love that.
I want to be in a good mood for you, or I want to feel this way. And I think that's a really big point. When we're younger, we're taught that our emotions, and it's unconscious, nobody realizes, our parents or our caregivers or, adults in our lives don't realize what's happening, but we're subconsciously taught that our emotions affect other people. Like if I'm in a bad mood, then my energy is affecting you. And there's a level to that, but we have to remember that it has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with the other, my emotions are mine and yours are yours. And I don't have control over how you feel.
Yeah. So do you mean mindfulness is like sticking with your bad mood? Is that what you're saying? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Pamela Chodron is one of my favorite authors to read, especially in regards to mindfulness. And one of her practices is to sit with that bad feeling, allow it, like really sit with it, feel it in your bones, in your skin, in your heart, in all of the places, and just allow that emotion to move over you. 90 seconds. Just just kind of wash through you. And then you can watch it dissipate for, in 90 seconds. Like if something in particular happens. And then I say this, and yesterday, I don't know why, and this happens to me sometimes, right? I was just in an awful mood. I was just like, I'm grumpy, and I was resisting it because I had so much to do, and and that's just it. I had so much to do. So I think that's a lot of times when we end up resisting our emotions. It's like, I don't have time for this bad.
I was going to say, I mean, it's like the times you need it most or when it's the hardest to do, like a lot of things in life. But the 90 seconds in 24 hours seems doable though. If we can remember that. But yeah, sorry, keep going with your.
That's fine. And that's just it. We have to remember it's a practice. So that's where the non-judgmentally part of it really and is super important. We're human. Not only do we have these human experiences with these human emotions, we came here, at least in my view, starting to get a little bit more spiritually, but to feel all of the emotions. We can't know joy without the discomfort. And when we allow ourselves to really feel some of that discomfort, the joy gets louder. as well. You know, the emotions get louder for a moment, but so does the joy. We have that contrast of feeling. So I think that's really, you know, another level of important to remember, that contrast between your emotions. You can't know, you know, if we are, you know, eating cake every day and, you know, Alfredo and pizza and whatever we want, and it won't seem as joyful and enjoyable if, you know, we don't have any contrast. It's just not as tasty anymore.
Well, and I think on the other side too, when I, you know, years ago when I was starting this, my thing was like chasing happiness. Like, I just want to be happy, happy, happy. Yeah. And you realize you can't hold on to that either. Like, that's not a sustainable, I think just as impermanent as joy and happiness is, so are these emotions like the grumpiness and anger and things like that. So yeah, I think anything, right? You can't hold on to any, either of those emotions. Yeah.
And I think we get this idea in our head that we're going to, if we allow ourselves to be sad or angry, that we're going to be that way, you know, forever and always. And, you know, speaking of anger too, and I think it's feeling the emotions isn't the same as reacting to the emotions. And I think that's part of that fear comes into play, that, you know, and again, afraid that we're going to affect other people with those emotions. So allowing it to move through you doesn't necessarily mean that you're reacting and responding. And this is something, I mean, I've struggled with, you know, for quite some time. It's one of the reasons why mindfulness was so appealing to me, was to, you know, it was so often pushing away that anger and that feelings, instead of allowing it to be there. And they still, you know, they still show up all the time, and but they change. You know, sometimes with the kids, it's like, I am frustrated, I am angry right now, and it doesn't have anything to do with you. Like, I don't know how to explain this, but I promise you, I don't know why I'm frustrated, and you are not, you know, the contributor of this emotion. Dan Siegal.
Right, that's amazing. Do you say that to your kids? I just want to. That's amazing. I think that's a really good practice too.
Thank you. I'm not sure I've even ever admitted that one out loud yet. So.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good practice.
Dan Siegal is an amazing psychologist, not a psychologist, psychiatrist, who studies the brain and mindfulness, and is very, you know, well known in the mindfulness area. I love him. I just finished one of his books again. But one of the things that really, and I think this really hits on that non-judgmental piece, that was like, yes, we can't help it. Once we get triggered, our brain starts to move from the prefrontal cortex to the middle of the brain, and then down to the reptilian brain. And the trick is to catch it before it gets all the way down there, and to recognize. But if we're so automatic of going back down here, you know, this goes back to, you know, the fight, fear response, flight response of, you know, when we were living out in the world,
millions of years ago.
And you know, where a tiger comes along and we're scared of the tiger, and we want to react to that, right? Our brain's still doing that, and it's good. There's, you know, that's where our ego was developed. That's, you know, that's that prefrontal cortex there. But once a trigger begins to happen, it just, and once you're down here, you don't know where you are. You're not even realizing you're there.
That's true. You don't even have the awareness, right?
I had a student say to me one year, he's like, Miss, everything goes black or red. I think he actually even used the color red. Everything just goes red and I can't see. And then the next thing I know, I'm, standing over a kid I just punched in the face.
Wow. Right.
He's like, I don't even know. And I'm like, and I'm sure, there's different, levels of extremity in it from each person, based on their prior experience. But I mean, I can now, to the point I can see myself going, and it's like, I'm like, oh no, stop, don't go there. So if I say it out loud, it kind of helps catch it a little bit. It doesn't take the emotion away. It doesn't take the anger away. It doesn't take the frustration away. Like, I still have to let myself be there and feel it.
Right. Well, one of the mindfulness things I try and do is to remember to breathe. And I know maybe as a yoga teacher, breath is something that you've worked with. Is that part of your experience too? Is that one of the ways that we can help kind of bring our brain back? Okay, cool.
Yes. Deep belly breaths literally pulls us from, like, it's scientifically happening in our brain.
Wow.
When you take those breaths, it will pull you up there. So if you feel that's like, I don't know why, I guess it's when I'm usually cooking dinner and the kids are, in the living room and I can see them through that doorway. And I'm usually there and I'm like, and I can get, to about here at this point.
The lever just gets a little.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like that, like a lever. But you can literally disarm yourself with deep belly breaths. So, when you're hearing somebody sigh, and that's where you can take it back to, like, don't take it personally, right?
Right.
Their behavior, their feeling, they got triggered because of some experience they had when they were less conscious, when they were, children, and their brain was still beginning to develop. Let them have that.
Right.
And, work on their lever coming up. Let them have that breath.
Right.
Be in their moment.
Yeah, I remember Thich Nhat Hanh, his book on anger is saying that, it's a selfish emotion. It is all about you. Anger. It's not about the people in the surroundings, which is why I liked the mindfulness that it takes in the moment to say to your kids, okay, this isn't about you.
Yeah.
let me just deal with this.
Yeah.
I also have a lot of lovely ladies watching us live on Facebook too, so I just want to say hi to everybody. Okay, now we can keep going. I really like this. I want to dig more too into how you make this a practice, and like when you maybe can share your story about how you, like, when you first made it a practice, how long it took you, and where you're at with it now.
Yeah, I really liked that question and pondering on because the way you had worded it was like, was there a defining moment? So when I went, I never really thought about it. It was always like, well, yeah, there was a defining moment. And, you go about your day mindlessly and it's like, oh, there's this defining moment, this defining moment. And then when you go to sit down to really think about that question, I was like, there wasn't a defining moment. And it kind of set me in that thought process, like, oh, right, there's the purpose of, everybody's looking for their purpose, right? So it was really helpful to kind of think about that, because I think my path has always been a spiritual one. Growing up, religion wasn't something that was ever pushed on me, or it was always something to be encouraged to question and explored. My mom went to China and Japan when I was a kid, and she brought back Buddhas.
Wow.
She was raised Catholic, and sometimes we would go to church when I was younger. And then as I got older, I was like, oh, let's go to church, and I wanted to explore all the different religions. And she encouraged that. And I think that was it really shaped my the part of the personality of me that I tend to question everything. I want to see the other side. I want to like, well, all right, if your view is this way, then I'm going to look the other way. No, even when I have, all right, this is pretty much how I think and feel. Now that you're saying it like this, I want to look the other way.
Wow.
I have a lot of curiosity in that. And I think that's one of, it is a big teaching within mindfulness. And I'll even, when I was a kid, I would go to like my friend's Bible studies. And this is, I don't, if I offend anybody, I'm sorry. I was 9 years old. But I think it was the one around Christmas time, one of the vacation Bible schools. And I went with a friend, and I was sitting there, and, they're talking about the story of Mary. And I was like, what if Mary just didn't want to tell her dad that she had sex? And they were like, they were like, they did not know what to do. So, and then in college or in high school, I had friends who followed the Quaker religion. So I was practicing Quaker for quite some time, and that's probably, something that suited a lot of my viewpoints and my spirituality. After college, I read the Celestine Prophecy, and that was something that I was reading, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is like my thoughts and my, it was just so nice to, read something that aligned with my thinking. So then, I become a teacher. I'm teaching social skills, and it kind of leads me into the law of attraction and studying the law of attraction. And then I'm just kind of more and more just finding stuff to add into my curriculum that was more and more mindfulness. And I went to go and get my doctorate in brain-based learning through John Hopkins. It was a really difficult program to get into because it was online and anybody from over the world could take it.
Wow.
And I didn't get in. So a friend of mine, colleague of mine, was like, well, what are you going to do? I was like, I would love, is there like a master's degree program for mindfulness? And he's like, I don't know. And I'm like, let's Google it. Let's see what happens. And there was through Lesley University in Cambridge, and it was online, and it was one of the best experiences that I've ever had.
Wow.
So that was like 5 years ago. And so here I am still trying to kind of figure out how to teach it and use it. And it was actually I was going for my master's degree and kind of figuring out that the graduate level certificate was pretty much the same thing. I was busting my ass, learning so much, loving it, but also like, is this enough? One of our teachers asked us to meditate on what's most important to you. And what she meant was what is most important to you and how you can affect and change the world. Like, it was a leadership course, in your career. And she's like, so I don't, this isn't your family and, your husband or your kids. Like, think really big. And they were my really big. I couldn't stop thinking about my kids and my family and like the immediate. I was like, well, and one of the things I would teach in my social skills class, I think I read that on one of the videos that I shared on my page, but was that poem about how you have to change the world. You have to start with yourself. You have to start here. And I'd been learning so much within mindfulness. I was like, I need to stop taking in, and I need to start applying. So that was, there's a couple of defining moments in there.
Yeah.
But it's that was a pretty big one where I was like, I need to stop striving so hard. I need to stop striving like all, it was always a goal of mine to be, have a doctor in front of my name, as part of my story, who I wanted to be. So it was something I had to take off and just kind of be with. But mindfulness is what led me to it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. You know, it was kind of a trick question when I asked you if there's a defining moment, because the more people I talk to, there's never kind of one point. It is this like gradual where you kind of put puzzle pieces together and you think, okay, well, if this is like how I believe this works, then I want to look at how this works and then maybe see if it fits in with this and, you know, read more and learn more. But that's, I mean, I think that we should all have a master's degree in mindfulness. I think that, and what you're doing as a teacher is so important. I wish every child can learn about emotional intelligence and subjects like this.
Yeah.
I mean, I think every adult needs it, but like, why don't we just start as kids just to like save ourselves
exactly
of frustration and miscommunication and everything else. So
one of my favorite quotes is, if every 8-year-old was taught to meditate, the world would know world peace in a generation.
Oh yes. That's not on your page.
Yeah.
That's one on your page. Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, I recommend everybody check out Mindful You. That's tagged here in this post after the video for more insights from you. But I wish that every child could know that they have the option to like take a breath, to, you know, stay still for 90 seconds. Yeah, our friend Liz was saying that emotional intelligence is so important in all aspects of life. Yeah, I mean, and kids are even smarter than adults. So I can only imagine what you could do with a tool like this as a child when your brain is already hungry for systems and like these relational kind of methods. I mean, that's when we're like absorbing it all.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. I mean, that's, you know, one of those parental regrets that I didn't start some of this stuff earlier with my kids. They're 9 and 13 now. And I just, sometimes I'm like, oh, I totally wrecked it. I didn't start. And I'm like, wait, you just got to be where you are now and
yes,
one foot in front of the other. And, you know, because they're both like, no, Mom, we're not going to meditate with you. I don't, no, don't force me to meditate. I cannot force them to meditate. It's like forcing you to think about something.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you can't force anybody at any age, they have to want it. But I am hopeful that, you know, like a lot of my talks, these subjects, it does start within you, but I definitely see them affecting the other people around you. So, you know, even if you can't get your kids or your spouse to meditate with you, your household is the better for you having your practice.
Yeah.
And your community and your students and everybody in it. So yeah, that's what we can focus on, the things we can control.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. So my cousin Emily, who's also a teacher, said that their 8th grade class has they go over mindfulness in their classroom and everyone found it really helpful. That's awesome. Yeah. I know I don't remember having anything like that. I think we had a class in elementary school where there was like a wheel with like emotions written on it.
Yeah,
I didn't find them or something, but like, it was like one day.
I actually used that because I actually just made a whole pretty rainbow up in my office, you know, for the kids. Because I had one student, she would come in, she's like, I don't know how I'm feeling, miss. And I'm like, all right, let's, you know, so I put the wheel up there for it because it's important to be able to identify it. It's part of it.
Right. I mean, that's a good place to start, but I feel like that was the 10-minute lesson, and then we didn't get anything more. You know, it's like, well, what do you do with that emotion? You know, like identifying is great, and that awareness is definitely part of the, you know, mindfulness. But then, you know, give me some tools to sit with it, breathe. Yeah. Non-judgment. That's funny. The judgment thing has been coming up as a theme in all of these too.
Oh, wow.
Topics that I didn't always think that would come up. So
Yeah, and the non-judgment is so important. Again, that back to Dan Siegel's brain example. It was so freeing to read that, because it was like, okay, this is part of the human experience, and I think the most important thing you can do out of it is to own your shit, right? Like, you're going to go there and own it. Like, if we can be non-judgmental, like, oops, I screwed up, right? I think that makes the non-judgment piece really, really important.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up, because I forgot that I wanted this to be part of it, is even if you don't remember in the moment, right? Like, let's say you don't handle it the best way in the moment. Do you agree that like a part of mindfulness is going back later and saying, okay, maybe I didn't handle this the best way, or even if you just say it to yourself, right? Even if you don't have a chance to maybe talk to that person that you yelled at again.
Definitely. Repair, and back to Dan Siegel, that's exactly what he's one of his many examples. That's part of, he loves acronyms. I can't remember them all, but one of them is the R for repair. Like, once you have gone there, you go back, you acknowledge it. And I see that's where I really started too with my kids, and I've seen those conversations with them where it's just like, okay. And just think about anytime somebody's apologized to you, it's like, oh, thanks, I get it. You're human too.
Yes.
But it really melts away when we begin to own that. And it's like, all right, we can move on from there. Like, I've literally just felt and seen that, like, go whew, away when you acknowledge
to both parties.
Yes.
Right? Yeah, it's incredibly powerful. Yeah.
I'm afraid of it, right? We're so afraid of it.
What are we so afraid of?
The feeling. We're afraid of what we're going to feel. There are relationships that end because, of things that you've done. And I think experience shows us that there are, because we want to cling, we want things to stay the way they were. It's that clinging factor that's involved. So
yeah, that's funny. And that is stronger, like that uncomfortableness or awkwardness or that resentment is still strong enough to keep us there instead of apologizing and moving on sometimes.
Yep. And I think it maybe the fear of judgment, which is ironic, because I think that's actually what was released. Like, I was wrong. Yeah, you were wrong. Like,
right. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. The non-judgment of yourself and taking away the fear of getting judged by other people.
Yeah.
I like that.
So you asked me for different tips. I gave you I said like the 90 seconds one.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And being embodied, being able to see and recognize when things show up in your body. Rain is one of my absolute favorites. Tara Brach is the one who coined the idea of rain. So, and that's where you can almost, pull this into the 90 seconds, or anytime you're feeling any emotion. It's great to start with the ugly emotions, though, because they just kind of naturally, like, I don't want to feel this way. What can I do? Rain. Recognize that you feel it. Okay, I'm angry. You're mad. Accept it. And you can, sometimes you can kick a ugly, response right there just through that acceptance. Integrate it. So that's that embodiment piece. Notice where it shows up in your head, in your thoughts, in your feelings, in your fingers, in your toes, in your belly. Just notice what it's doing. And then the N is non-identification or non-judgment. So that shows up again, and that's just that reminder that our feelings and our thoughts are not facts. So it's just because they're there, it doesn't mean that they're true.
Yeah, this is back to the real versus true thing then. Okay.
And then meditate. I know so many people are like, I don't have time to meditate. I don't want to meditate. But oh my gosh, it is. When you can sit in a practice with all of those emotions coming up, all of those things, all of those hindrances, I think it's like sloth and torpor, restlessness, ill will, doubt. Doubt's a huge one that I experience. When you have all of those experiences throughout the practice, then you can carry them with you throughout your day. And when you have a regular practice, even if it's just 5 minutes, I think research says ideally you want to like 12 minutes, and then, increasing from there. But if you just make it a habit to even 1 minute and then increase slowly day by day or week by week, whatever it is, it's when I'm not meditating regularly, I know it.
Yeah. I can't go a day without it anymore. Absolutely not. And giving them just the space, that I feel like they need to breathe too, like breath is important for us, and meditation is a way to give space to let those emotions kind of air out. So we'll have a whole other session about meditation, because we could talk for hours about that next. But
awesome.
This was so amazing, Becky. I also, when you did the RAIN thing, I had never heard this acronym before. I also pictured it like rain, like you're kind of like letting it, is that part of her talk too, where because you've let it kind of wash over you with like the acceptance and the non-identification.
Definitely.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. And it's such an easy, like I said, John Siegal uses so many acronyms, but like the RAIN one makes it, I don't know, I guess it's just been taught so often by so many teachers. I've just heard it so much that it's stuck in my head anyway, but I definitely think like, yes, just let it be here.
Yeah, I mean, that's even one of the mindfulness practices, is like a shower, just standing under water washing over you. That's a meditation.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I know you're starting your day over there in America.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for sharing everything. If you want to share any more resources, I tried to take notes too on some of the authors you mentioned, so I'll try and list some of those below the video so people can find those. Perfect. And then check out your page for more of your talks on mindfulness. It's so beautiful. Thank you for all you're doing, Becky.
Yes, thank you. This is awesome. I love watching your interviews.
Okay. Glad to hear it. All right, I'm gonna